Hi, loves. I wanted to come back on, especially now today, and continue with our exploration of the five faces of the feminine with Venus and Capricorn, different emanations of the wise woman. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Akhalinda, the goddess of never not broken. And I wanted to talk about her specifically because Venus right now is in the crown chakra of her descent phase. So she is as high and bright in the sky as she's going to be. And as she moves down and makes her 7 or 8 conjunctions through her descent phase of her cycle, she'll move through our chakra system and give us an opportunity to clear, you know, different energetic gunk from the system if we're looking at it through the perspective of how chakras work. The crown chakra in particular deals with our kind of beliefs and some of the ways that certain things we believe can be toxic. And um, with Capricorn being in astrology, the midheaven, a lot of how we understand the midheaven to be is like the outward face that we present to the world so that we can do our work in the world, like the who we are and how we're going to show up for our job and where we're going to invest our energy. And I think that there's a lot to break down and look at, but Akihlanda in and of herself is kind of an elusive goddess that many of us haven't heard of, an elusive archetype. And with that, I think that Megan Watterson in her Divine Feminine Oracle breaks down who Akihlanda is very succinctly. And so I wanted to read just a little bit from what she wrote, just so we can get an idea of who Akihlanda is and why she is, in my mind, the supreme goddess of wisdom. So let me read just for a second. Akhalinda, she says, represents the essence of the phoenix. She is the indestructible energy that embraces change. She knows that everything is conspiring to transform her into only more love and light. Akhalinda is an elusive goddess from the Hindu mythology, and her name means Akhalindeshvari. Shvari in Sanskrit means female power or goddess, and Akhalinda means never not broken. So she is the goddess of never not broken, or in other words, she's always broken. She can never be broken because she always is. She is the embodiment of what we try to avoid, the dissolution of our ego's identity. Now, one of the things that I've encountered on my path with myself often is this like something really tragic or traumatic or difficult will happen. And I will feel myself like cracking from the inside. For instance, when I found my birth mother, she did not want to meet me. And at that point, my whole life had been, on the trajectory towards finding her and finding out who I was. Like that was the culmination or the pinnacle moment of my life. And to have her decline to meet me or to even talk to me at all about who I was or give me even medical history was a cracking, like I disintegrated in that moment. I remember visualizing like all of the pieces of my body, like a broken vase, all laying out on the floor. This is how I felt energetically. And like I had no idea how to pick them up and put myself back together again. It was such a deep traumatic experience that I was changed on a DNA level. There was no going back. So it was like the day before, and then there was the day it happened, and the day after, like I could never go back to who I was on the other side of that event. And the amount of gripping and shame and guilt and efforting I put into trying to just get on with it was, I mean, there was a lot of effort there. I I couldn't like it's like that mother voice, you know, like I had kids and I have a wife and I've got stuff to do and I don't have time to be broken. And so all of my effort, it didn't go into healing in the beginning. It went into this like carrying the vessel. And I think that those kind of like toxic ideas that we can't break come from our ideas around perfection. And I think our ideas around perfection ultimately come from the culture of transcendence that we live in. And that's why, while we're at the crown chakra, I want to talk a little bit about how our ideas around transcendence really filter into like every facet of our lives. And they don't allow us the space we need to be broken. And we have to face it, like we're always in some state of brokenness, you know, even if we have moments of being whole, we either see ourselves in the paradox of being broken is being whole, right? Because we're never not whole, or we're always going to be living within a split. And part of the Venus descent journey is looking at the splits. Where are we split from ourselves? Because once we get down to the underworld, that's where we want to kind of come all the way apart and meet ourselves and then do some reclaiming of essence self. But the split here is in these ideas of perfection and then never being able to embody that perfection. And perfection's a trap as it is. And this idea that it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember, watched Oprah and Super Soul Sunday when, you know, years ago when she was on, but I remember she had a guest on who he had written this book and he had talked about that idea of I'll be happy when, you know, transcendence in it, when it comes towards orienting ourselves towards our healing or transformation work, is that same kind of principle as I'll be happy when. You know, it's like there's some kind of destination with transcendence. You know, we're waiting to be saved, you know, and being brought into the light and into that state of wholeness versus you know, we already are saved, or, you know, we don't need a savior. So nix that. We already are where we need to be. We're exactly where we need to be. And the paradigm, or the way that that paradigm stays in place, is because we don't get there till the next life. That idea of transcendence doesn't come until the next life. And a lot of our healing and transformation modalities are geared towards that same kind of religious grift of like, there will be someday that you're ultimately healed and whole. But you already are. You know, life is an ever unfolding journey. And we learn that with the Venus cycle because of the way her cycle moves fractally. It's like an ever blooming, unfolding flower, you know, and then it goes through states of decay. I mean, there's never a time in life that this isn't happening. And linear time is part of that grift, this idea that there's an arrival place to be. There's this idea of perfection, or there's this idea that once you do a certain thing or get a certain thing done, that you'll get whatever prize it is you're looking for. And the real work on the mat is right now, today. And I know it sounds very cliche to say it's in this present moment, but I mean, really, when you take your orientation from the outside of you, that's what that is. That's like external orientation. Anytime you're putting your future on some, or you're pinning your hopes or desires on some future or some outside destination, you've got yourself in an external orientation. And it's really hard to feel really at peace and very settled, very feminine when you're externally oriented. And so bringing your orientation inward and seeing, like, sitting yourself in this day. And this is what I mean by cliche, like the idea that, you know, one day at a time. If you were to just sit energetically in this moment and focus on, say, what you can get done today, just today, or just now, right now, and not allowing your mind to travel to some distant place in the future, that's when you'll feel the most empowered, because you're sitting, you're being, you're inside of your being, you're inhabiting all of yourself. And it really is all that you are. Like, all that you are in this moment is all that you are. And it's perfect. It's all perfect. You know, there'll be food here for, or sustenance here for you to do whatever work comes through tomorrow. There'll be seeds and dreams and desires. And I'm not saying that those are bad. Again, the goddess is paradox. So, you know, we have to be able to walk the tension between having our dreams and our ideals and things that we want to accomplish versus living in an entire externally oriented life and working towards goals that aren't feeding the feminine here now. I had made a few notes to talk about today because there's quite a lot here. You know, I want this month for us to spend time looking at how the models of transcendence filter into our everyday life, that grift of orientating ourselves towards a savior. We see it like with the pandemic, and I'm not making a political conversation or comment here. I'm just talking about the way people are oriented. These are just observable things. You know, it was like we were all very afraid, myself included. I'm not I'm human, so you know, this is part of Akhalinda's magic, is the human part. You know, we're human. So we were here and we were very afraid, and we didn't have a lot of tools to help support us during the um, pandemic when it first hit. And so the first orientation we took was up against. So all of a sudden, it wasn't that we didn't have tools to support us, it was that we didn't have tools to fight against the virus. And then it was in this, we were in this waiting game to develop tools to help us. And then the vaccines came and they became a savior. And so it's just, it's kind of like a pattern that we live inside of, and we're conditioned to do it. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I just want us to look this month at how that pattern and that orientation, that external orientation, can cause us to suffer, and what flowers when we're internally oriented. And I don't mean like extrovert, introvert. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're like, the seed of where you're coming from is inside of you. So your sense of okayness is something that you've checked in with inside of you. It's not because somebody else is approving or disapproving of you, right? I hope that makes sense. It's that you know you're okay because you know you're okay. And you have full permission for who you are as a human and where you are at on whatever cycle you're in right now. You know, I think that that's kind of can be like the shadow side of the healing world too, is that if you're, you know, in a state of decay or involution or breaking down, that you feel somehow less than, you know, people who look like they have it all. That's why perfection and performative bullshit is a problem, because it makes us, if you can't see it, it can make you feel less than, or like you haven't arrived, or you haven't been enlightened. And I'll tell you, the most enlightened people I know are the people who have been totally and thoroughly broken, and who have full permission for their humanity. They just understand they're human and they're going to fuck up, and that's totally okay. And they don't bypass stuff, like sometimes they're a dick to their husband or their partner, or they get pissed and give someone attitude in the store, and instead of going home and judging them and like feeling a bunch of guilt and shame about it, if they can make amends, they will. If they're not proud of it, and they're like, yeah, and they shrug it off. They don't make that like external judgment from the transcendence culture mean something about them, right? It's just they have a lot of permission for their human, and they understand they'll make mistakes, they'll do shitty things because they're people. Those people who have been able to stay awake through it all and have a lot of permission for what it is to be human are the most enlightened and wise people that I know. And that is why I wanted to talk about Akhalinda today. Now, I want to double check over my list. I don't memorize. These are just things that come through, but I do try to like find some highlights. I just want to make sure that I feel like I've covered everything here. Oh, yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say is, and I think this is an important piece, is like I've been feeling into Akhalinda and what never not broken is, and like what it is to feel like you can't break is I think it's sourced in scarcity. Like that idea of needing to be perfect is, there's a piece around scarcity and not having trust in yourself, like real trust that you can be broken, totally broken, and navigate life still, and that you're entitled to the full range of humanity that everyone else does, and even in your most brokenness, you're entitled to all of the goodness that everybody else has, even if it's something. And I think a lot of us are responsible in some way for our brokenness. Like I wasn't responsible that my mother didn't want to meet me, but I was responsible for how I had set up the expectations for that meeting and how much hope I had pinned on that. And I was responsible for how unconscious and kind of sick I became from the trauma of that. I'm not saying, taking full responsibility for something isn't about blame, right? It's just about seeing where I have power, where I had power, and then if it comes around again, maybe there's something different I can do there. But yeah, so that idea of perfection, I think it's sourced. There's a scarcity of real trust. It's that external orientation, looking outside of yourself and not feeling like there's enough resources to be able to be seen in your vulnerability, right? And so what can we do to shore up our trust? And trust is a huge word, but like, I mean, trust that we're going to be held, right? Not by other people, but that we can hold ourselves, and that the feminine is holding us. Like if you are someone who relates to the feminine as like an embodied archetype, right? Like God is like a gray man in the mirror. Some people relate to the feminine as mother. So trusting that we're going to be held, right? We're held. The universe has us. Really, there really is a kind of plan in place when you surrender and let go of the gripping. And the gripping, that grip and control, is everything that Akhalinda isn't. So she's never not broken because she's let go of the reins of control, right? She doesn't feel scarce. There isn't a worry that she's not going to be taken care of, that the things that she needs to survive are not going to arise for her, with the alchemy between her own work and what the universe will bring forward for us. So I thought that that was a really important piece. I've been feeling into her vibe, gosh, since November, and really, what does she want to say? Um, the other thing is that with that scarcity piece, there's like this this way I remember for me, and this happens in smaller cycles too. It's just my most profound and existential trauma was that when my mom didn't want to meet me. But like there's a scarcity and fear when we don't want to break, and if we don't allow ourselves to break, we're going to stay small and afraid like forever. I mean, the breaking part is the expansion. It's the busting out of the energetic, kind of like the mummified energetic chrysalis. We have to be able to break. And so there's something to look at here as well around this piece of like, what would happen if I break? But what's the worst thing that could happen if I break? And look at it. And is that the worst thing that could happen? Because there's a lot of best things that happen when we allow ourselves to break too. There are ways. This is a very short video that I'm doing, but like if we got into a deeper exploration of this, there are ways that you can be held and break. Like you can enter a container to break, and there are a lot of ways that breaking in an absolutely radical, chaotic, sudden, kind of severing, shocking way is a gorgeous symphony. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed or had the opportunity to, be part of, is that kind of like just when everything falls apart. It's the worst thing, but it's part of the breaking open. So there was that. Sorry, I'm just going through these. I'll get off the video and say, oh, I should have mentioned that. Oh, yes, also. And when I wrote this down, like it was something that came to me. When we're busy chasing perfection, which really is the lack of permission for being broken. That's what that is. Perfectionism is the lack of permission to be broken. When we're busy chasing that, we cannot catch a pure signal. And so if our intention is to come into a greater relationship with the feminine and be able to channel her gnosis through our bodies and to be able to apply that to our lives, and maybe even, in our leadership positions, bring that into our communities. If that's something that we want to do, if we are busy chasing perfectionism and we don't have any permission for our brokenness, the channel is not there. The signal is cut off. It's not clear. And so, it's something that we definitely want to work with in this root chakra area. So as we're in the root chakra, let's look at that. So we're going to be looking at how the kind of grift of the religious transcendence paradigm filters all the way down through our lives. We're going to look at scarcity as it relates to being broken. And we're going to look at perfectionism and that performative piece, and how that's a splitting off from our essence. Anytime we show up as our performative self, we're putting our face on for the world. We're fogging out who we really are. And then we're going to look at that idea of being scared to break, how that keeps us small and afraid, and how chasing after perfection stymies the signal, to true gnosis. And so that's Akalinda. I never want to drag on and on and on by talking. I hope I didn't jump around too much. There's a lot. There's a lot here. I feel like I could talk for a very long time about Akalinda. I've really enjoyed, having her up in my field as I went through COVID and through some of the stuff that's gone on these past couple of months. She's been just a great companion, and I'm learning so much from her wisdom. So thank you. So glad you joined on today to listen. And until next time, bye bye.